And good evening, you're very welcome to a very exciting event. This is the Irish FameLab Final 2014. My name is Jonathan McCrae. I'm the presenter of Future Proof on News Talk and the Science Squad on RTE. I'm here to introduce our finalists and our judges as we go through an evening of scientific talks which will hopefully excite you, entertain you and engage you. This is a really exciting competition that's only here for the second time. It's basically an opportunity for young scientists and enthusiastic scientists to talk about their work and spread the message that is science is awesome. So the format of tonight is very simple. The communicators tonight have 3 minutes to deliver a presentation on a scientific subject. And in those 3 minutes, they can't use PowerPoint because it's a bane of public speaking. They can only use what props they can bring onto stage with them and their own creativity. So we've been doing heats up and down the country and we have 10 finalists here tonight who have amazing talks for you. What they have to do in 3 minutes is to sort of squeeze a scientific concept into an entertaining talk that has clarity, that you know what's going on, you understand the concepts within the talk, that the content is strong, that it's scientifically sound and that it means something, and of course that all important one, charisma. They need to be able to sell it with a bit of sizzle. So before we go on, just a little bit of housekeeping. Fire exits are yeah and yeah and yeah. The Twitter hashtag is FameLab, and if you hear a horn at the back, don't be alarmed. That is Miriam. Miriam, honk the horn. That is when your 3 minutes is up. All the ladies and gentlemen will be briefed on that, but you'll get a warning at 2:30 and then your final horn will be at 3. So they have to hit it on time. It's an extremely difficult thing to do and they're very brave to come up here and do it, but I think you'll agree that we need strong science communicators in Ireland and internationally, but it's great to see so many people here with fantastic talks and I hope you give them as much support as they need. So let's do we do a round of applause. Is that cheesy? Come on, let's do it. Way! I'm not going to do the whole, oh, you do better. We're not in a panto. Okay. Let me introduce your judges. Judith Moffat is from CPL. She's manager of the Science, Engineering and Supply Chain Division at CPL. Sounds very fancy. She's recently got married. Show the ring. Come on. Woo! Judith's background is in biology and chemistry from NUI Maynooth. She has a master's in science communication. She's pretty much conquered the world in this field. She's professionally and personally passionate about science communication and she's a committee member and organizer of Alchemist Cafes where scientists meet with the public and talk about their work in an informal setting. They're great, you should check them out. Fergus McAuliffe is studying for a PhD in UCC. You're still studying for that PhD? Yeah. On the use of willow trees for sustainable environmental purposes. In 2013, Fergus won FameLab Ireland and FameLab International! And we're hoping we're going to repeat that success this evening. He has been a presenter on the current series of the fantastic TV show, The Science Squad. He's also been a guest speaker at TEDx Dublin 2013, European Researchers' Night in the National History Museum in London, and at Science Week Czech Republic in Prague. He's also featured in Vogue and Vanity Fair as a science communicator, which I think is probably a first. What were you doing in Vogue?
I had my clothes on anyway. So.
Okay. Boring. Okay, and our final judge is Andy MacDonald. He's a business development manager for the Northern Ireland Science Park and is currently working on a cross-border initiative, the Northwest Regional Science Park, which got €14 million in funding. Nice. His degree is in interactive multimedia design and he has founded 2 successful companies, his last being a digital media company in Northern Ireland. He's also been Northern Ireland chairman for the Irish Water Ski Federation. There you go. That's what they call a tidbit. Okay. And before we start, huge thanks to British Council, of course, and Cheltenham Festivals. This is their event, and the Cheltenham Science Festival and FameLab in general has been a crucible for great science communicators. Let's hope we continue that tradition tonight. Thanks to News Talk, Science Gallery, CPL, Tyndall, Northwest Regional Science Park, and our sponsor, SFI Discover Programme. Are you ready? Oh, come on. Am I going to have to work all night? Yes! Okay, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my first speaker. Actually, do we need to explain maybe the formality of what happens? Once everyone's done their talk, we're going to have a bit of a break. We're going to have a comedian, Maria Boyle. She's amazing. She's going to do a bit of entertainment for you. We want you to make sure you have your phones off, and if you wouldn't mind filling out the forms for your choice, because we have a prize for the public prize, which we give out at the end as he struggles to find his words on stage. Don't do this, by the way. Towards the end, once you've seen everyone, you can make your public vote, and we'll count those up as well, because there's a number of prizes that are going to be given tonight, not least of which is a Cheltenham Science Festival, where one of the finalists will get to go and do his or her talk at the Cheltenham Science Festival. Okay. We wanted to start on a bit of an upbeat note, so please welcome our first speaker, Owen Griffin.
What's the likelihood you're going to die? Spoiler alert, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. We're all going to die. We can't cheat death yet. We're not immortal yet. We can't live forever yet. Now, you may note I say yet at the end of all those sentences. I say this because it is not impossible. We are just not there yet. But we shouldn't be afraid. I mean, we share this death sentence with every other being on the planet. I mean, from our president, Michael D. Higgins, to comedians like Dara O'Brien, to the wild beasts of the savannah plains, to the monsters of the ocean deep, all of us must die. But wouldn't it be wonderful, just wonderful, if we could live forever, if we could grow younger instead of growing older? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what happens in one specific species. And this species is not by any means the magical or mythical phoenix. It doesn't die and then it's reborn from the ashes in hellfire. No, this species is a jellyfish, the immortal, get it, jellyfish. Now, the immortal jellyfish has the same life cycle as everyone else, as in it has a childhood phase where it's a larva, it swims around, and then it has an adolescence phase where it asexually reproduces. That means it settles on something, it forms into a gelatinous egg cup called a polyp. And this can asexually reproduce. It can clone itself, it can make asexual replications of itself. And these thousands of replications spread out among the ocean currents and form adults. They form sexually reproducing adults, which are the bells and the tentacles we all know and love. Now, these, once sexually reproducing, these adults then die. In every other case, they die, except in the case of the immortal jellyfish. And here is where it gets interesting. You see, when the immortal jellyfish becomes sexually mature, it can choose what it wants to do. It can either continue on and die, which it does in 90% of the cases, or it can revert to a younger form of itself. It can absorb its bell and its tentacles and revert back to the polyp stage. But why is this important, and how does it affect us? How will we become our own Benjamin Buttons? The thing about it is that our cells have functionality. When our cells become eye cells, they stay as eye cells. When our cells become muscle cells, they stay as muscle cells. And this is where it gets different for the immortal jellyfish. It can choose the functionality of its cells. It can make its tentacle cells into a simple cell and then a stomach cell. And this is what should intrigue us, what should excite us, and what should inspire us. After all, immortality is but a jellyfish away. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Owen. So we'll go to our judges. We'll start with Fergus.
Oh, and that was great. That was a great start to the evening. I'm just wondering, why did you pick this topic?
Why did I pick this topic? Very good question, Fergus. I picked this topic because I really like the idea of immortality. I like how it's the only one of its kind in nature. And I like how elegant it is and how simple it is. And how, I mean, we are, as a species, we're very advanced. But I like how in nature, sometimes the most elegant solutions are in the most primitive forms. Especially since it's possible for us to study these people and these species and maybe figure out how they do it. We know the mechanism of the cell, but we don't know what triggers it. And if we could figure this out, maybe instead of living forever, we could slow down the aging process of our own cells, which would be very interesting.
So do you think that like most of the research out there that needs to be done is on the understanding of the how it does it?
Yes.
And do you think, and it, then is it mostly hypothetical if we could apply that to ourselves.
I love how you said the hypothetical there. You see, now I don't know if this is attached to the it's called Turritopsis dohrnii. It's the immortal jellyfish. I don't know if this is associated with it, but there was a paper published recently from the University of Edinburgh where they were able to how should I say this? They were able to make younger the thyroid of a rat. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but what it means is when we're young, we have a big thyroid, and that helps us our immune system. And as we grow older, our thyroid decreases in size, and that has a detrimental effect on our immune system. And the fact that they can increase the size of the thyroid in this rat means that it's possible for us to use this kind of technology and these kind of mechanisms to enable us to have an extended life, which is always, fun.
Okay. Please put your hands together for Owen Griffin, please. Owen's a student of zoology at University College Cork. Our next speaker is David McKeown. He generally messes about with spacecraft control systems in UCD. He has been known to play soccer to a standard which legally defines mediocre, according to his bio. Please put your hands together for Mr. David McKeown.
My favourite animal, I guess my favourite animal would have to be the hot dog. Animals. It's got an amazing way of protecting itself against its natural predator, the hot dog bun. It does this. My second favourite animal, I guess my second favourite animal would have to be the cicada. It also has this amazing way of protecting itself against its natural predator, pretty much everything. Birds, mammals, humans. Cicadas are small insects. They live in North America. Friendly folk, live underground, feed off the roots of trees. They're safe there. But occasionally, over a few drinks, a group text gets sent around. Lads, we're heading out, we're going to find a mate. And they all head out, all at once, billions upon billions, from underground to overground, 1.5 million per acre. Think bank holiday weekend, Copper's dance floor, 3 a.m. And the results are very, very similar. Many of them get eaten alive. And there's two survival strategies. One is that obvious one. Strength in numbers. They can't eat us all, which is not successful in coppers. The second one is more subtle. It answers this question. In a game of life, when you play, things try to eat you. How often should you play? And you forgive them for not playing too often. So let's say they put on their dancing shoes every 12 years. Well, 12 is a terrible choice, because 12 is divisible by many numbers. So for our cicada, we want to avoid our predator cycle. But for 12, you'll meet predators that show up every 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 years. They're all divided evenly into 12. So that's a bad choice, and it ends up with our cicadas getting eaten. But what if they waited one more year? If they showed up every 13 years? Well, cicadas go to school like you, and they learn that 13 is a prime number. Now, prime numbers only have factors of one of themselves. So that means they don't meet the cycles of their predators, because numbers don't easily divide into it. And this ends up that we don't have a tasty snack for our predators. And we see this exactly in nature. We see in North America, there's 15 broods. 3 of them show up every 13 years. The other 12, they show up every 17 years, an even bigger prime number. Hot dogs. Hot dogs, they come in packs of 10, and hot dog buns come in packs of 8, which means it's almost impossible for hot dog buns to wipe out a complete pack of hot dogs. 10 minus 8 is 2, which is the optimum number for hot dog mating. And so we take 40, you need to get the common factor to get 40, 8 by 5 to wipe out the whole thing. And it's this clumsiness of commonality, this awkwardness of factors, which means that hot dogs, they survive in your freezer, but cicadas, they survive in nature. Thank you.
Well done, David. Andy.
Well, thank you very much. We go on here, please do. I suppose, what's your motivation about speaking about science in particular?
Well, it's nice. Science is such a big part of our culture, and it's nice that we get to do stuff like this and celebrate it in that kind of way. So we should have more things like this. So as a researcher, I'm definitely obliged to start telling people these stories, and it's nice. We write technical papers, but we can't expect people to read technical papers to the general public. So to become and say something and entertain these people is a great pleasure. It's very enjoyable for me, and it's nice if people can enjoy it.
Sure. Well, you certainly touched on the sort of comical aspect of it, and at this, you're appealing to adults here at this stage now. I suppose one of what I particularly do in my profession is we try and get school leavers. We try and sway them towards science and technology, trying to steer them away from the usual teachers, accountants, and this, that, and the other. I mean, how would you present what you have done today, or speak in a scientific manner to a very sort of kid-oriented
Yeah,
audience?
I like not to underestimate the intelligence of kids, so I wouldn't change it all that much. You want to avoid big words and technical words, but really it's not about dumbing down the message. It's about bringing it across more clearly and maybe examples. So the hot dog is a supermarket kind of adult analogy, and I'm using that to kind of frame the whole thing, but so maybe you can pick something which is more kid-friendly. I'm not that good at kid-friendly, but it was, I can't give you an example. But yeah, you'd rewrite it, but it's still about having a talk which is true and is correct.
Fergus?
Yeah, just one question on cicada. I've done a little bit of reading on that, and I'm just wondering, I think there's two theories out there. One is that they have the prime number to avoid the predator life cycle. Mm-hmm. The other is that they have prime number life cycles to avoid mating with each other.
Yeah.
Could you just maybe explain a little bit more about where, what argument is stronger?
Okay. So for, as I said, just 15 broods, so kind of packs of cicadas that live in North America. And apart from all coming out in these prime numbers, 17 and 13, they all come out in separate years. And one of the reasons they say it might be that is that it avoids kind of cross mating and doing that, so it keeps it kind of pure, and they all do that. The interesting thing about the prime numbers is how they kind of chose these kind of things, and it is this kind of beautiful example of kind of evolution by natural selection, where you don't see the cicadas which are come out every 12 years because they've been eaten, so they just don't exist. You see the ones that are 13 and 17. So yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
doing.
Thanks.
David McKeown, everyone. I hope you've eaten before our next talk. Suzanne is a microbiologist. Suzanne Dunn has dabbled in a bit of molecular biology. Following her initial studies in UCC, she spent many years gaining fantastic experience about the inner workings of the pharmaceutical industry and how medicines we take are regulated and manufactured. She's a recovering Toastmaster and avid Amdrammer. She's also a firm believer that science should be communicated in as fun and audience-friendly a manner as possible, so no pressure. Suzanne Dunn, everyone.
So, how much consideration have you ever given to the inner workings of your digestive system? You know it. It starts at your mouth, where you put your food in, and it ends, well, it ends where all the stuff you didn't use comes back out again, but we won't talk about that. Now, you've all seen the ads on TV that talk about probiotics, so you know that we have a lot of bacteria living in our digestive systems and that your gut bugs are important to your health and well-being. Chances are, though, that you've only ever really thought about your digestive system when it wasn't working well. So, consider, if you will, or picture a person with a healthy gut, never sick a day in her life, and contrast that with someone who's suffering from, say, colitis. This person has abdominal pain, diarrhea, possibly even blood in their stool. Now, colitis is treatable with medication. But if you had this illness and I told you that there was a drug-free treatment, meaning no nasty drug-related side effects, would you be willing to try it? Remember when I said that we weren't going to talk about what comes out the end of your digestive system? Yeah, I lied. This treatment is a transplant of feces from the healthy gut into the sick person's gut. Basically, it means having somebody else's poo put into you to make you better. Now, leaving aside the obvious ew, the big question is, does it work? And actually, yes, it does. In fact, the treatment of gut problems with healthy person poo isn't new. The Chinese were doing this over 1,000 years ago. They made a soup out of poo and water, and this was given to the sick person to drink. Now, happily, things have moved on a bit since then, and fortunately, modern fecal transplants don't have to be tasted. But are they effective? Well, one study that was done to assess effectiveness against the more conventional therapy with antibiotics showed that these treatments were successful. But this study was stopped early. Now I know what you're thinking. They were taking somebody's poo and putting it into somebody else. Of course that study was stopped. But no, the reason for the early finish was because the poo transplants were so successful that it was considered unethical not to offer one to all of the patients. Because with the antibiotic, only 3 out of every 10 people got better. With the poo, over 9 out of every 10 patients were cured of colitis. And so, for some people who are having problems with their digestive systems, maybe all that's needed is for their gut to be repopulated with health-promoting bacteria.
Well done, Suzanne. Judith.
Well done. That was brilliant, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Just out of interest, where would you see science communication fitting into your career in the future?
I suppose for me right now, I'm kind of at a bit of a crossroads at the moment because I'm just finishing up a PhD, and it's something that I would like to see very much part of what I'm doing in the future. I suppose for me right now, it'll very much depend on where I find myself going next. But on a personal level, this whole experience has actually inspired me to try to maybe look at something like starting a science communication blog and maybe moving in that direction. So I'm looking at different maybe ways of trying to make that kind of unique to, have that be, I suppose, maybe unique to me in some way, because there are a lot of science communication blogs out there. It's about finding my niche, so that's something that I would like to do and that I've actually kind of started making the first moves about already. But it is something that I feel that is something I would like to do an awful lot more of in the future, yeah, for sure.
Great stuff, thank you for that. And just one more thing, how did you come up with the topic?
Well, as a microbiologist, you can't not come across this particular theme. And as Jonathan said earlier on, I have worked in the pharmaceutical industry for quite a long time, and part of my job is to keep up with current regulations and how they change. And it was actually something I read in kind of a trade press kind of article that the US pharmaceutical regulator, the organization that regulates medicines and all that in the United States, they're called the FDA, last year they gave a license, or they gave permission for FMT, is the proper name, fecal microbiota transplant, to actually be used as an official medical treatment, which was a big change in how it's perceived. So that was kind of the thing then that was in my head when all of this started. And I thought, ooh, what a way to kind of get an audience interested and talk about something ever so slightly disgusting at the same time.
And we thank you for that.
No problem.
Suzanne Dunn, everyone. Our next speaker tonight is Rory Robertson. He works in human nutrition. It's brought him from Melbourne to Madagascar, and I don't know if this is related, but he claims to cook the second tastiest lasagna in the world, beaten only by his mother. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Imagine this. You have just won €2 million in the lottery. Congratulations. You have just eaten the most delicious chocolate cake ever cooked. You have just had sex. And you have done all three at the same time. Congratulations to you too. In these situations, your brain produces chemicals called neurotransmitters, which give you that great feeling of ecstasy and energy. But imagine this. You've just been fired. A family member is sick. You have depression. In these situations, your brain produces different chemicals, and you feel stressed and sad. The highs and lows of life are controlled by these chemicals and emotions in your brain. But what if these feelings of happiness and stress could be controlled by something else, another part of your body? You all have two brains, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, there's another part of your body that can control your thoughts and feelings. Does anyone want to guess where it is? That's right, down there, guys. In your intestines. You are all carrying 2 kilograms of bacteria inside of you. In fact, 90% of the cells in your body are bacterial cells, and only 10% are your own human cells. So you are more bacteria than human. And this ecosystem in your gut is as diverse as the Amazon rainforest. Thousands of species existing together, all with different functions. So how can your bacteria down here control your emotions, which you thought came from up here? Well, to solve this mystery, we must delve deep inside this intestinal rainforest inside of you. And by delving deep inside this jungle, we may find some unique organisms that hold the key to fighting deadly disease. And for years, researchers were exploring this jungle until they came across an organism that did something incredible. These unique bacteria produce the same neurotransmitters that make you feel good as your brain, so your gut control your emotions. Have you ever had a gut feeling or butterflies in your stomach? You may want to think twice about that. Well, there are certain foods that can actually increase the growth of the certain good bacteria in your gut, meaning you can, in essence, eat yourself happy. But maybe not as happy as our chocolate-eating, lottery-winning womanizer over here. For some people who don't produce as many neurotransmitters in their brain and face anxiety, stress, or even Alzheimer's disease, well, there is real potential to reseed this rainforest in your gut and maybe act as a therapy in the future for these terrible diseases by feeding not only the brain in your head, but the brain in your gut. There is some food for thought. Thank you.
Well done, Rory. And over to our judges, Andy.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. So, I mean, have you done any research on specific foods actually attached to these feelings as such? I mean, I know, keeping a healthy diet and staying fit, it's all part of a healthy lifestyle. I mean, is there anything in particular? I mean, is it the sugary, chocolatey foods, or is it the broccolis and the spinach?
My research is on how specific foods can change the different families of bacteria in your gut. The research regarding this, in terms of changing mood and fighting mental illness, focuses more on selecting these actual bacteria in your gut and feeding them as probiotics. Now, this hasn't been done in humans yet, but it's shown huge promise in animals to fight depressive-like symptoms. So it's more the probiotics rather than actual food. But of course, there is potential for foods to do the same thing. It just hasn't been shown yet.
Okay. And, given infinite resources and, a lab to yourself and 10 assistants, I mean, where would you see yourself in 10 years' time?
I'd love to continue this kind of work. As Jonathan has introduced me, I have a passion for food and everything like that, but a growing passion for this kind of association with the brain as well. But being here, of course, I love science communication as well, and I think it should be an integral part out of any scientist's career. I mean, I've been to so many boring lectures and talks from the best scientists in the world, so I think it's essential that any scientist who's starting off has to have some sort of ability to communicate it to a wide audience.
Fantastic, thank you.
I thought you were going to say, and some of them are here today.
Oh, maybe they are.
Rory Robertson, everyone. Nice work. Adam Murphy is our next speaker. He's a PhD student in DCU, where he's looking into using nanoscience to improve cancer detection. He plays squash and is a bit of a sci-fi fan. And he's recently co-founded the science blog NanoDash. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'd like you all to do something for me. I'd like to take yourselves back to when you were children. That wonder you felt the very first time you saw a magic show. Now let's go a little bit older and remember how you felt when you realized it was all a trick, a mirror, or a particularly bendy assistant. The moment you realized none of us are getting our Hogwarts acceptance letters. Well, I'm here with a message for all of you. The magic is real, and I guarantee you, most of you have it in your pocket. Say, for example, I took this ball. Nope. Say, for example, I took this ball and I threw it at the judges. I won't. But say I did. What I'd have on my hands, other than a very expensive lawsuit, is that the ball would bounce off, because that's what always happens. But what if I told you I could make it pass through the brim of this hat without ever interacting with it all? Like a ghost. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can't, because that's crazy. That doesn't happen. Except it does sometimes. Say we go down to the quantum level, to the particles that make up atoms. Say we go down to an electron. Say I took an electron and I sent that at a barrier. Well, there's a small but significant chance that this electron can just pass through the barrier like a ghost and come through on the other side as if nothing happened. It's called quantum tunneling. And that's kind of a misnomer. It doesn't tunnel through, it doesn't bore through. It just goes through. It just is through. To hell with your ideas of how walls work. Now, I told you this was close. It's in the sun. It's how nuclear fusion can work. Two atoms that shouldn't be able to find themselves together can suddenly tunnel inside one another and fuse and give out heat and light. So you can see magic if you just look up, but not directly up. But I told you it was closer again. Most of you have a smartphone in your pocket. And the bit that lets you keep your videos, your photos, your Miley Cyrus, it's just that one song, I promise. Well, all of that works through quantum tunneling. A flash drive is made of little components called transistors, and usually these are just electronic switches. But in a flash drive, they have a barrier on top, and a barrier is usually so thick that even electrons can't go through. But say you want to write some data, well then you give the electrons a bit of a kick and suddenly they can come in like a wrecking ball. I mean, they now possess enough energy to traverse the barrier and end up inside the transistor, where they get trapped. And when you're done, you slow them down again, and suddenly you have electrons trapped in a barrier. And whether or not they're trapped is what decides your ones and your zeros. And your ones and your zeros are what make up your PowerPoints, your Word documents, your cat pictures, your selfies. You know how it all is yourself. And that's the magic trick. There's magic in every single one of your pockets. So I want you to remember that the next time you look at Facebook for the 3 millionth time today. Just give a note of the magic in your pocket. Because this is the thing about science. Magic tricks lose their luster when you know how they work. But science just gets more impressive. Thank you for listening.
Well done, Adam. Judith, I think.
That was really brilliant. Really engaging, I have to say, and very clear and great analogies. You're clearly a Miley Cyrus fan as well, which is good to know. Good to know that one song, yeah, that one video, I'm sure as well. Why did you choose this topic?
Because it's what I felt as a kid. When I was a kid, I adored magic. I loved watching people like Penn and Teller and David Copperfield do what they did. And then suddenly, when you get a bit older, you start seeing the patterns. You start seeing that it's just a shuffle. You can even start seeing the mirrors, and you know the lady's just in half the box. But then I got into physics, and I got into my quantum mechanics class, and suddenly they started talking about these things. And in quantum mechanics, if you're looking at a problem and you go, that's going to be the answer to that problem, you're wrong. You are automatically wrong. It's going to be the opposite of whatever you were thinking. It is real magic. And it captured that wonder I felt when I was a kid again, and I haven't let that go since.
Good. Brilliant. Thank you.
Fergus?
The concept of quantum computing. I think it is something to do with these like unbreakable codes and stuff like that, and that's what we're working toward, or what people in IT are working towards. Do you know much about that, or how far we are away from realizing that?
Quantum computing is one of these wonderful ideas. The idea that you can have just an electron, in whatever state it's in, whether it's spinning one way or spinning another way, can decide your ones and zeros. And consider how many electrons you can fit in a wire, consider how many ones and zeros you can fit in a small place, and it's all talking about considering at the moment. There's very little being done. We've managed to store something like 10 bits, 10 ones and 10 zeros. It's a long way off, but when it happens, and I do believe it will happen, and when it happens, it will change the world.
Okay, great.
Adam Murphy, everyone. Trina O'Connell is from Cork. She studied biomedical science in both CIT and DIT. So they went on to get an MSc from Dublin City University. She is never off Twitter. She's an avid baker and crafter, and she loves to extol the virtues of crochet at TOG, the Dublin hackerspace. And if you ever want to know how to do a stitch in 9, or I don't know, whatever it is, you should ask Trina. Trina O'Connell, everyone.
Most of us have a microwave in our kitchen. And what do you use it for? Well, I'm told that there are people in this audience who use it to reheat coffee, and those people, please get up and leave, because how can you do that to a cup of coffee? But the rest of us, we do much more cool things with it. We have a tendency to do a thing called measuring the speed of light. Now, most of you are probably going, Trina, I don't measure the speed of light in my microwave. Please, I use it for reheating curry. When you go home tonight, you are going to go measure the speed of light in your microwave, because it's actually quite a straightforward thing to do. So you all know that a microwave is a type of light. And using the back of an envelope and a microwave and a humble marshmallow, We can work out the speed of light. I don't know if you know many physicists, but the stereotype is that they do back-of-the-envelope calculations, and they actually do. They're fantastic people. So if you're going to harken back to your days of intercerts, junior certs, most of us have done science at some level, and those of us who haven't are going to. You're going to do it soon. It's awesome. You'll remember a formula called C is equal to F lambda, yeah? C is equal to F lambda. And you're going, Trina, what does that have to do with my microwave? Well, it's quite straightforward. So C is the speed of light. F is the frequency of light, which means how many times a wave goes. And lambda is the length of your wave. Now, you're going to go, what's this got to my microwave? Well, if you turn around your microwave, you'll find F really quickly. F is, and I will write this down for you, 2,450 megahertz. That means your microwave spits out a fresh microwave 2,450 million times per second. That's a lot of waves. Now, the other part of this equation is lambda, which is the length of a wave. So how do we work that out? Well, back to my humble marshmallow. So if you get your marshmallows and you stick them in a microwave, you'll discover that they're the stickiest thing on the face of the planet. I have found a biodegradable alternative to blue tack, people. You will see that some of them have melted and some of them haven't. You'll have also discovered this when you were doing your frozen curry. Some of it is hotter than the sun, and some of it is the same temperature it went in at. And this is because microwaves interfere with each other. They constructively interfere and become stronger, and they destructively interfere and form these cold spots. And if we take a ruler, we can see the distance between them is about 6 centimeters once your ruler doesn't stick to it. That's half the wavelength. We multiply it by 2, we get 12 centimeters. So, those of you who have calculators on them can work this one out. But it actually works out within 5% of the actual value of the speed of light. So you're all going to go home tonight and work out the constant of the universe for yourself.
Thanks very much, Trina. Andy?
Thank you very much. I think your last time you spoke, we was chocolate mayonnaise.
Chocolate mayonnaise, yeah. No, I believe you should do science in your kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any type of science in the kitchen.
Yes, absolutely. No, that was very interesting. I suppose. What is this? This is your passion, food and science.
And science, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't work in food in my laboratory. My bosses are up there. I work on the sugars on the surface of your cells and how they act as signaling molecules. But in my spare time, who am I not allowed to stand next to? That's aliens. In my spare time, I do quite enjoy spending time in the kitchen. I have a science blog that actually is mostly cake. And so, yeah, I quite enjoy doing food science in the kitchen. And actually, the microwave with marshmallow experiment I first saw when I was about 8 or 9, watching, the Royal Institute lectures they're on at Christmas.
Yes, indeed.
They're amazing. Yeah. And then you're like, some 8-year-old is like, oh my God, I can actually do this in the microwave. And your mother's like, no, you're not, because the stuff is going to stick. Actually, I can show you what happens if you put a bar of chocolate into my microwave. You see that black spot in the middle? Do not turn off the rotation in your microwave. You will burn the chocolate, and not quite the house down, but and the smoke alarm didn't go off, but be vigilant, be vigilant.
Okay, so I suppose now you've talked about your passion. Okay, where would you like to see yourself? I mean, what field? What would you like to achieve over the next number of years?
My mother asked me that question. What are you going to do when you grow up? And I'm like, don't ask me that question. Quite frankly, I have no idea. I see myself doing science and talking about how cool science is, but where they're talking about it is my main job, or where they're talking about it in my spare time like I do at the moment. We need to build a time machine, go forward, find out, and then come back, and you let me know. I just love science. It's a disaster. Wrecks your life.
One last question then. What's the importance of having people like yourselves speaking about science and technology, innovation for our society? I mean,
well, first of all, you discover that scientists are real people. Some of us like to bake. Some of us like to, I don't know, I believe people have hobbies. Yeah. I bake. I crochet. And it's nice to say that, yeah, these are scientists, these are real people. These are men, these are women. they go out, they do things. Science is accessible. Like, science is hard. You have to work at it, but you can achieve it. And so it's kind of important to talk to people who know what they're doing, or who maybe don't know what they're doing, but are quite willing to say to you, actually, I haven't got a clue, but this is how I got to where I am, and if you want to do the same as me, follow my footsteps.
Trina O'Connell, everyone. Save some of that chocolate for me. Mark Kennedy is a first-year PhD student in the Department of Physics in both UCC and Notre Dame in Indiana. Originally from beside the sea, he moved to the big city and did his undergraduate degree in astrophysics in UCC. While not working in the depths of the Cane, he could be found swimming on the Mardyke or in front of the TV, one more often than another. You may have to explain that at some point, Mark. Mark, everyone.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state. Then nearly 14 billion years ago, expansion started. Wait, why do we think that? Well, this is a story about the past and the future. But more importantly, it's also a story about you and me. Back in the 1920s, astronomers started measuring the distance to faraway galaxies. And what they found is that galaxies tend to be drifting away from our own. In fact, they found that the further a galaxy is away from us, the faster it's going. So they started thinking, is there something special about our galaxy, or is there something more unique going on? Now let me show you. If we consider a balloon here, and we're standing at this point here, and we measure the distance to the point up here, we'll find it to be roughly about 4 centimeters away. However, in the future, if we do it now, we're going to find that distance has increased to about 5 centimeters. So what's going on? It's not that these two bodies have actually moved away from each other. It's that the space in between them has gotten bigger. Space itself has expanded. And scientists then believed, okay, there must have been a time a long time ago when there was no space in between anything in the universe. There was a spot of a lot of density, and then suddenly, there was a massive big bang. But then they figured, well, this should leave behind a lot of energy, right? Where is it? Well, there was a problem. Consider a photon, or a particle of light, at the moment of the Big Bang. It's got a short wavelength here, which means it's very energetic. It's in the gamma rays or the X-rays. But as the universe expands, that wavelength gets bigger. And a bigger wavelength means it's less energetic. So when scientists went hunting for this, they found it in the 1960s in the microwaves. In fact, if you look at the universe through the microwaves, you see this light absolutely everywhere. And so they called it the cosmic microwave background. But the problem with this light is that it came into existence about 400,000 years after what they thought the Big Bang was. So then they decided, could they go back further? 3 weeks ago, scientists measured the polarization of this light, or how it wobbles as it moves through space. And they found imprinted on it a signature from the first billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second after the Big Bang, which means they've nearly found the entire evidence they can get for it. So where does this bring us into the future? Well, who knows what we're going to discover? But what does this mean for you and me? Well, let's finish off that song. The earth began to cool, the artichokes began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built the walls, we built the pyramids. Math, science, history, unraveling the mystery, and it all started with a big bang.
Well done, Mark. Over to our judges, Fergus.
That was great, Mark. Could you explain a little bit more about how they actually, like, as far as I know, that they measured the expansion and things like that through like redshift and blue shift. Could you maybe just explain a little bit more about that?
Of course, so there's a problem with the speed of light that a lot of people haven't told you. You've probably been told time travel is impossible, right? That's not true. Since the light travels at a certain speed, it means that it takes a while for it to get to places. So when we look back into the universe, if I say to you something is about 4 light years away, what I'm saying is it took 4 years for the light to leave that object and get to us. But that means, strictly speaking, I'm seeing it as it was 4 years ago. So if I say to you that, oh, I saw something at its 13.6 billion light years away, That means I saw it as it was 13.6 billion years in the past. And that's what scientists were looking for when they were looking for this expansion of the universe. They were measuring galaxies that were billions of light years away from us. So they were looking at them as they were billions of years ago. So when they talk about a redshift, they essentially are talking about how far in the past ago was this?
Cool. That's great.
Judith.
I'm very curious. This is like a science communication come a singing competition. You have a great voice, straight off. Well done.
Thank you.
Why did you enter this competition?
I genuinely believe that public speaking is a necessity for science. What's the point in doing research if I'm not able to communicate to the people that I really want to talk to? My actual main reason for doing this is when I told my granddad and my gran that I'm going to study astrophysics, they look at me and they get that little glazed over expression. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, like, oh, well, that's lovely, Mark. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to become better at explaining to them exactly what I'm doing so that they can understand it. So that when I tell them, oh, we're measuring the expansion of the universe and the acceleration of the universe at these high redshifts, they'll understand the terms I'm talking about. And I think it's really, really important that you don't get just trapped up in the science, that you always remember to bring it back to the people you're doing it for.
Mark, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, 3 to go. Our next speaker is Luke McGuinness. He is a natural science student here in Trinity. He also works at the Science Gallery. He's a passionate scuba diver, and he apparently believes that bow ties and fezzes are cool, although sadly he's not wearing either tonight. Please give a warm round of applause for Luke McGuinness.
I knew I put it somewhere. So the functions of the brain are activated. Thoughts have a peculiar charm, the imagination is lively, and in some persons, symptoms of intoxication are present. So these were the words a French researcher in the 19th century, a guy called Victor T. Junod, used to describe the effects of nitrogen narcosis, a phenomenon that affects scuba divers and other people who find themselves under pressure, and I don't mean of the looming deadline sort. So nitrogen is one of the most abundant elements on Earth. It makes up about 80% of the air we breathe. So what happens to a scuba diver is that as he or she descends further and further below the surface of the water, the air within his tank is compressed and is pressurized, meaning that the nitrogen in that air is also compressed. So as this air then enters the diver's lungs, or what we call ambient pressure, or the pressure of the environment around us at any one time, this means that compressed nitrogen enters the lungs and more of it is able to dissolve into the bloodstream, causing the narcosis. So now I have to put my hand up and be honest. Scientists don't actually know how this happens, how increased nitrogen in the bloodstream causes narcosis, but studies suggest that it dissolves in the lipid or the fatty membranes of cells and there interferes with nerve transmission. So nitrogen narcosis is quite different from the bends or decompression sickness, but it is no less dangerous. In fairness, I think you'll agree that feeling like you've just spent the day at the pub while being 30 meters underwater is bound to cause some problems. So this is particularly pertinent for cave divers, where the nitrogen narcosis prevents them from making the good judgment call of turning around when they start running out of air, meaning when they do eventually run out, they have no access to the surface and sadly pass away. So it's for this reason, for the lives lost due to the narcosis, that the father of scuba diving himself, Jacques Cousteau, named it as l'ivresse de la grande profondeurs, or the rapture of the deep. So for those of you who are feeling a little bit down and also who are paying attention to the start, it also has a much more light-hearted and informal name, the Martini effect. It earned this name as experienced divers liken the effects of the narcosis to, as Jean had said, being drunk. They even gave it a scale. They said it was like having one martini on an empty stomach for every 10 meters descended below the initial 30. So that's one martini at 30 meters, another one at 40, another one at 50, and so on and so forth until you hit the bottom. I think it's quite ironic that it was named after an alcoholic cocktail, because alcohol has actually been seen to exemplify the effects of the narcosis. So much so that dive shops around the world have actually started acting under a new slogan: never, ever drink and dive.
Well done, Luke.
That olive tasted so much worse than I was expecting.
Andy.
Look, thank you very much.
No problem.
That was great. You're involved in your water sports, similar to myself. Yeah. Okay, so you've mentioned the effects of this nitrogen narcosis. Is there currently anything to combat that at this point in time?
There's actually, quite recently, there was a new, it's like a fruit pastille or a gel sweet that could be chewed before and would actually absorb some of the inert gases, so the nitrogen and other things that make up air. It's brand new. I'm not sure how scientific credible it is. It was only announced, I think, 2 days ago. I only saw it on the internet yesterday.
Okay.
Fresh.
Just a quick question. Do you know why it only happens below 30?
I think it just gets to a certain point where there's enough nitrogen dissolved in the bloodstream, because as you go further and further below, the nitrogen gets more and more compressed, meaning that more of it dissolves into the bloodstream. So I think once you reach a certain critical level, that's when the narcosis starts to sit in. It is different for different people, though. Different people are susceptible. Some people it happens at 20 meters, others it doesn't happen at all.
Okay.
So it just really does depend.
Okay, and just explore it a bit further. Is that why they use different mixes of gases if they're diving very deep?
So technical divers or tech diving, they use different mixes of gases to prevent nitrogen narcosis. So they use higher percentages of oxygen, which would be nitrox. It's enriched air, basically.
Okay, great, thanks.
Luke, go on, yep.
Very interesting talk. Thank you very much, Luke. I was going to say, how do you see science communication fit into your career in the future?
Well, I'm only a senior fresh student at the moment, so I have quite a way to go yet. Yeah. But even being able to talk about science in any way possible. So I still have a thesis to do in fourth year. I still have to go and apply for PhDs, masters, things like that. Yeah. And I think having this experience behind me, even in applying for internships, having the experience of being able to talk about science, go out and pitch what I want to do, my topic in particular, I think would be very important for me. Also the fact that I really enjoy it. Like I would quite happily do it as a hobby while working on something else completely.
Okay, thank you.
Give Luke a warm round of applause, please. Thank you. Home crowd advantage. Okay, our next speaker and penultimate speaker is Sarah Vero. She's a PhD student with NUIG and Chagask Environmental Research Centre. She works in focusing how water and chemicals move through soil and how this affects water quality. She is a keen powerlifter, and I would advise you not to call soil dirt in her present. Give her a warm round of applause, please.
A Japanese chef, Toshio Tanabe, recently introduced a soil-themed menu, and everything on it consists of soil. There's soil soup, soil sorbet, even a soil surprise, although I think he's kind of given it away. And this deliberate ingestion of soil is called geophagia, and it's not a novelty. In fact, it's been going on for centuries. In sub-Saharan Africa, pregnant women often eat soil, iron-rich clay soil, in order to supplement their mineral needs. It's estimated that some 28% of Tanzanian women take part in this practice and a whopping 65% of Kenyan women. In fact, they reckon that consuming soil can supply up to 20% of their mineral needs. They eat up to 30 grams of clay soil a day. That's about the amount of that Galaxy bar. Seems like a lot. In fact, it's not just in sub-Saharan Africa. It's also been recorded in Georgia in the United States, which kind of lends a new meaning to the phrase Mississippi mud pie. And in Sweden, clay soil is sometimes mixed in small quantities to acorn bread in order to reduce its toxicity. Now, why would you do this? Well, clay consists of tiny flat particles like platelets, and these have a negative charge. And as they pass undigested through your gut, they pick up toxins, tannins, and bacteria and carry them away. It also has potent antibiotic properties. It's been found to be effective against MRSA, Staphylococcus E. coli, even against a flesh-eating bacteria from West Africa, which causes leprosy. Now, there's a bit of a lack of controlled in vivo studies into this. However, NASA, and you don't really get much more high-tech than that, at the height of the space race, investigated whether clay supplementation could help fight bone density loss as a result of weightlessness. And excitingly, they found that it was way more effective than calcium supplementation alone. Even when we look to the stars, the soil beneath our feet helps us get there. And so while I doubt we'll be ordering spicy Szechuan soil from our local Chinese anytime soon, maybe we can go into Holland and Barrett and order us mineral supplements that looks like that.
Stop! Thank you, Sarah. Judith.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting talk. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks.
And just something that struck me there is the flesh-eating bacteria that you're
Sure.
talking about. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that and how clay's been used in that treatment of that?
To be honest, it's very new. There's a huge lack of studies. In fact, most of the studies are anthropological in nature rather than scientific. And I'm a soil scientist, so I don't fully understand the microbiology side of it. However, the crucial part seems to be that it binds onto the bacteria and carries it away before it can be effective. You can also apply it topically. That's why people take mud baths. In fact, Cleopatra was recorded as using mud baths to be effective for the skin. And basically, the clay particles form a protective layer that stops the bacteria getting at the skin. In fact, this is very effective. There's a thing called, if I can get the name right, it's clay combat gauze that's being developed and used in the United States at the moment, in which it's bandage impregnated with clay particles, and it's being used in a military application. So it's really exciting stuff, but as I say, it's very new. It's only become a science as opposed from an anthropological phenomenon only recently.
Okay, good stuff.
Fergus?
Yep. Just one question on the soil part. So, like, you've three main constituents of soil. You've sand, silt, and clay. And
Yes.
I'm just wondering roughly what percentage is enough clay in that soil? Because obviously, if you soil in a field, it's going to be a mix of all three.
You know, I don't actually know the percentages. It seems to be less to do with what the percentage of clay is than the type of the clay particle.
Okay.
Now, if you don't know about soil, it's a size-based scale. So you have sand, which is the greatest. Then you have you've then got loam, clay and silt, and get smaller and smaller. And the clay particles, the smaller they are, it seems to be the more effective that they are.
Okay.
It's also to do with the charge. They reckon that the kaolinites are the particular breed of clay that are most effective.
Okay, cool.
Sarah Vero, everyone.
And it's flown by, hasn't it? We are now down to our final speaker. His name is Sean O'Callaghan. He graduated last year with an honours degree in biomedical science from UCC and CIT. Sean now works as the Chief of Staff with the London International Youth Science Forum, as well as science. He also has a passion for writing. It was recently published in the January issue of BBC's science magazine Focus. Sean enjoys the value of a good joke, and after spending 5 years studying microbiology, he would like to consider himself a man of culture. Please give him a round of applause.
How well do you think you could write out the first Harry Potter book without making a single mistake? And I mean writing it out letter by letter by letter without confusing one C for a G. Do you think you could do it once? How about a second time? And what if I said to you that each time you did make a mistake, well, that was going to increase your risk of getting sick. It was going to increase your risk of getting a disease. And what if I said to you that if you make enough mistakes, well, that just might kill you? How well do you think you'd write out that book then? Astonishingly, your DNA is doing something remarkably similar to this right now. And I'm here to show you that DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is so much more than just three little letters. So, DNA. What is DNA? Well, it's the stuff of us, isn't it? It's the biomolecular structure that gives us our shape. It gives our eyes their color, our bones their length. It's the reason we have 10 fingers. Unless, of course, there are those of us here tonight who can count slightly higher than the rest of us. That's okay. I mean, buying gloves must be a nightmare, but it's okay. Because our genetic differences and our similarities, they're all down to our DNA. So, fundamentally, DNA is a method of information storage and transfer, a bit like a book. If you get the right sequence of letters put together in the right way, you get a book that makes sense. Now, your DNA doesn't have letters. It has these structures called bases, which are very similar to letters. If you put the correct sequence of bases together, you get an organism that can live. So, we're going to compare our genome of letters to a book of, our genome of bases to a book of numbers. So, the numbers are going to get kind of big, so hold on to your socks and bear with me for a second here. That first Harry Potter book, it's a big one. It has a whopping 461,664 letters in it. That's a big book. But your genome contained in each somatic cell contains 3.2 by 10 to the 9 base pairs. What the hell does that mean? It means that every single time your skin cell replicates, you copy out a whopping 6,400,000,000 letters without making a single mistake. And that's just for one cell in your body. Consider that you've got about 50 trillion cells, give or take 1 or 2. That means that periodically, your body copies out 3.2 by 10 to the 23 cells. How big of a number is that? Well, it's 3, followed by a 2, followed by a heck of a lot of numbers. And you do this every time without making a single mistake. It would be like you writing out that first Harry Potter book 700 trillion times without making one error. So the next time you're sitting around in your underpants watching TV doing nothing and someone gives you a hassle for it, say, "Excuse me, I'm writing the greatest story of my life here." DNA, so much more than 3 letters. Thank you. It's a bit of a mess there.
Thanks very much, Sean. Judith.
That's all right. Very good presentation, Sean. Very interesting and very clear. What do you think of the cultural and sociological impact of sites or companies like 23andMe, where people can actually,
I
get
think the
their
idea
genome?
is fabulous. Definitely, the idea is great because before, when you look back, okay, so 1800s, it was only the phenomenally wealthy who got to do science, and thank God that has flitted out. I mean, believe me, I'm broke and I do science. So it's nice that it can be accessible to everyone. That's the important thing about science. It should be accessible to everyone. Like your genome. You go back to the Human Genome Project and you need literally billions of dollars to do that. And 2.5 months ago, the first genome was sequenced for $1,000. That means that everyone in the room could get your own individual genome sequenced for about $1,000. Problem is, how well is it being done for that? Because with information there comes power. And if you tell somebody that they have a certain gene and they go home and they Google that gene without the correct information and they go, "Oh, good Lord, this gene causes cancer," that's not ethical. So you have to balance it. But I think it's a great idea, but it has to be monitored, definitely, because the information has to be apt as well as accessible.
Okay. And what role do you think science communication has in that?
Oh, huge, definitely, because the most important thing is the right information has to be given out. There's nothing more infuriating than, if you hear someone say, "Do you know they're putting chlorine in our water and chlorine kills us?" And you go, they don't. They don't put chlorine in the water. When you go to the swimming pool, there isn't chlorine in there. There's a thing called hypochlorous acid, which is similar to chlorine. But if they were putting chlorine in the water, you wouldn't be getting back out of the water, unfortunately. So science communication is very important to say that, yes, this is what's happening, but we want you to have the exact facts. And it shouldn't be boring. It can be entertaining, I've heard.
Thank you.
Yes, Andy.
Thank you very much. That was great. Just one last question that kind of almost applies to everybody who's really spoken today. Everybody, I've been quite humbled by everybody speaking today. Young guys. Really passionate about science. I suppose we're in a research facility here, university, and coming from a similar industry. And the idea is we try and facilitate guys like yourselves and try and spur on science and technology. What can we do to bring more scientists and guys like yourselves out of their shell and to speak the way you guys have all spoken to us today?
I think it's really important to just make it available, and I think that's it's a good question. I don't think you should encourage people beyond a certain point. I know that sounds kind of funny, but I always find it a bit weird when you see these banners that say, women in engineering or men in midwifery. Women are smart enough that if they want to become an engineer, they'll go off and do it themselves. If a man wants to become a midwife, he'll do it. The important thing is to make it accessible, that it's a level playing field for everyone, that if you are interested in it, you should be allowed to go and apply for it, no matter where you're from, the colour of your skin, what you believe in, so on and so forth. So I'm not huge on trying to push people who wouldn't naturally gravitate towards it, because I think you get bad people. Like if someone push me towards engineering, the bridge would fall down. But it should be that it's accessible, that if the right people can or want to get to it, that they can get to it. So I wouldn't push it, just let it open.
Thank you very much.
Sean O'Callaghan, everyone. So we've had to cancel FameLab Ireland this year because it's too difficult to actually pick a winner. So thanks very much for coming. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Okay, now's the difficult part for our judges. They're going to go away, sequester themselves, and this is really kind of upstaging me. So our judges are going to go away in your own time and make a decision. We want you all to make a decision yourselves. So you just pick one winner, put the number or the name. I haven't seen the form, so it should be fairly self-explanatory. I mean, it's not rocket science. And we'll collect those things. So if you want a toilet break, you can do that now. But we will be joined now. It is now, isn't it? Yes. By Maria Boyle, who is a comedian. She's also a cartoonist. She tweets from Twisted Little Kitty. She is here to entertain us for a few minutes. Give her a warm round of applause. Maria Boyle, everyone. Smooth, huh?
Hello. Hello. Hey, there you go. So my name is actually Dr. Maria Boyle. I work as a research scientist. The other things are merely distractions from me in the lab. So this is actually the first time I've given this talk, because it'd be really weird if I give a talk called this before. Actually, I have to say all the speakers were actually amazing. Could we get a round of applause just for them all, because absolutely. And I'm glad I'm not competing against them for a vote, although I would appreciate your love. So my name is Dr. Maria Boyle, and I have a PhD. We'll do a show of hands. How many people work in research here? Okay. Would like to work in research? Like to mock scientists? Okay. So I have a PhD, and I'll give you an idea of what the title doctor is useful for. People thinking I'm the other kind of doctor. So when people go, is there a doctor in the house? I can't really answer because I have a PhD, it's a doctorate of philosophy. Like, I can't tell you why someone's dying. I could only philosophize as to why that's happening. Although if any of you would like to show me anything for like €60, I'd totally look at it. Can't help but I'll have a look. Relatives who send cards to me writing doctor as if it's a joke. Dr. Maria Boyle, have a happy birthday to our favourite daughter. Thanks, Mum. As a comeback, and I'd need somebody to read this in a good loud voice. Sure.
You dropped that beaker of acid. That was pretty clumsy.
That's Dr. Clumsy to you. And then I have to fill in like some sort of incident report. It's great. And then it's on sideshow presentations to give the illusion that I know what I'm talking about, which is why it's always handy to take it off. So these are things, I draw cartoons, so you can do science and art together. Some people would say that makes you a genius. I say it makes you just easily distracted by things. So these are questions that people have asked me when I was doing my PhD. What's your research on? What's the point of that? What will you do after? Are you going to be a teacher? Did you hear that Sean got a job? Did you hear that they're buying a house? What do you mean you've no money? Can't you get a summer job? When do you finish your PhD? You finish it now? Now? And it leads to this question. Why are you sad all of the time? So other than that, please do a PhD because they're awesome. So some people think that scientists say eureka all the time in the lab because like this is it. We've found it. We've discovered it. In my experience, this is what happens in the lab. We swear a lot. I swear a lot. This thing at the end, I hate science. I've said that way too many times in my life to nobody and way too loudly, and people have walked away. But with this thing in science, like if at first you don't succeed, try 2 more times so that your failure is statistically significant. Scientists, we like to do things in trees. You know, like rock, paper, and scissors? It's like, best out of tree. It's exactly like that, except a lot of emphasis is put on paper. It's true. So you can use science to answer the bigger questions in the world, and because I have a PhD, what I'm about to tell you must be true. This is the science part, concentrate. So we'll start with physics. It seems like mostly maths, but then they bring out the lasers and spaceships, and suddenly we're all interested. Why does toast fall butter side down? Because butter is a hero. Biology explains things like the birds and the bees, then explains why they're genetically incompatible and their love must die. So I'm a microbiologist, so this is the truth behind the 5-second rule, if any of you guys are into that. So like when you drop your food on the ground, such as your toast, because it links back to the other thing, germs get 5 seconds to decide if they want to get on the toast. For a second, this guy decided yes to quit their germ job. That's a micromanager. Yeah! Oh, there's going to be more of this. To get a passport and a disease visa, or disease-a. This is their leaving party. A lot of small talk. Huh? And he's saying a toast to toast. And I showed this to somebody and they went, it looks like a great party because they've got Coke. This guy, he was sniffing because it's emotional. And then they got a last minute 2-pack because he leaves the last second. That was meant to be toast, but 2 people was like, that looks like a door. To opportunity, no. So like toast, it's the promised land. If it lands butter side up, because it links back to the other thing. Biology can help make things better. Or worse, depending. How to make a panda. I like my steaks like I like my panda. Rare. And 100% panda. Oh, yum, yum. You're so yum, yum. So this is me explaining how to make a panda. First, you take a polar bear. Polar bears are exceptionally strong. They can swipe a seal out of the water with one claw or open a jam jar without using a tea towel. So you take a polar bear, and then you take mascara, which is a great way to poke yourself in the eye with something covered in ink, if you're a girl. So polar bear plus panda plus gin equals panda. Obviously, not enough gin drinkers. You could also insert PhD for gin. It's basically you cry and then your mascara runs, and then people are like, what's wrong with you? But they don't ask that because you're on a bus. So the next bit is chemistry. The only one to contain any mystery. Audience laugh. So this guy's saying, any coal is a goal. I don't know how to do the noise of a man chatting somebody up, clearly. I know something harder than a diamond. You can bucky my balls anytime. That's Buckminster Fullerene. All of these are examples of carbon dating! Related to this, diamonds are a girl's best friend, but you should hear the stuff that diamonds say better behind her back. That dress is way too small for her, and her fat arse. That's why you should always get conflict-free diamonds. I know you're groaning, that means you like it. So the next bit is a shameless plug to things that I do, which are obviously connected to the science, not really science, and drawing. It brings joy to people's lives. Yes, joy. If it's in bold, it must be true. I make greetings cards, and I covered this in clip art because clip art is amazing. Look, this woman's trying to steal the cat. Give me the cat! That's why I used it. Happy birthday! The candle can burn slowly into dark nothingness, or be snuffed out now in its prime. Something to think about on your special day. This card is late because I forgot. or I'm very lazy, or I was helping Batman fight crime. This is a card for somebody, like if you're single and friends of yours get married, it's a good idea to send them something like this. You're married. You made me believe in love again, but reminded me that I'm so alone. On the answer to that I put, but forget about me, you guys have a great day. This is a Father's Day card because Father's Day is coming up. Dad, I would love to be half the man that you are. It's for a man. But genetically, I already am. This one's also vaguely science-based. Happy Father's Day. From your fastest sperm. It's the thrilling end bit. For low expectations of thrilling. I love like science in general, but one of my favorite things is I quite like the whole space exploration thing. Are you guys aware of the Mars rover? So it's like basically this robot that they put into space, basically put up on Mars to see if there could have been life on Mars. And the answer is maybe. A long time ago. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, to be honest. But like, I became fascinated with the Mars rover, and I made a song up about the Mars rover. I know! How talented is this woman? Says no one. And I'll sing the song for you if that's okay. and you can join in. No, come on everyone, you all know it. I've been a Mars rover for many's a day, and now the Earth is so far away. Took photos of landscapes and talked to a stone, a constant reminder that I'm all alone. Because it's not like Wall-E, not like Wall-E at all. Just a lonely Mars rover with no Eva to call. Went to a crater, saw nothing at all. Mars looks exactly like Total Recall, except with no Arnie or people to hurl, no giant space station or three-breasted girl, and everyone, because it's not like Wall-E, not like Wall-E at all, just a lonely Mars rover with no Eva to call. Thank you. These guys are amazing. This is my website. The cards are real. Thank you.
Our judges are finally back. No, I did say it was going to be very difficult, and a huge thanks to all of our judges and our finalists, but the moment of truth has come. Is that right, Liz? It has. It has. Okay. Yes. We have two main prizes, the audience prize and the main prize, and then there's the second and third prize from the judges, okay? So we're going to announce the audience prize first. Can you just maybe, do we have this infrastructure to be able to do this with our feet? Yeah, go on, do that. The winner of the audience prize is Adam Murphy. Adam. Well done, sir. I haven't got all day. Okay. In reverse order, third place of tonight's International FameLab Irish final is Sean O'Callaghan. Sean, well done. In second place, Rory Robertson. Kindle Fire HD. Woo, woo. Okay, let's do the feet thing. Bit more than that, come on. The winner of the Irish FameLab Final 2014 is Adam Murphy. Congratulations, Adam.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to say something? Come on, say something.
So what am I doing? Saying things? Thanks, I am genuinely shocked. I have to say, there were 10 people. I wouldn't have been able to call it. There were 10 people and every one of them came up. I was looking, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that's better than mine. I'm so chuffed to win and so shocked. Thanks. Thank you all.
So very exciting for Adam because Adam gets to go to the Cheltenham Science Festival, which is phenomenal. And the British Science Council and the Cheltenham Festival, they look after you really well. It's a fantastic week. If you ever get the opportunity to go, some really, really amazing talks, really interesting science communicators that you know normally we just see on the screens. You're going to have a great time. I hope you had a great time tonight. Weren't they fantastic, folks? Thanks again to our judges, Fergus, Judith and Andy. And just a final thank you to our partners, News Talk, CPL, Science Gallery, Tyndall, the Northwest Regional Science Park, and our sponsors, SFI Discover. Thanks a huge amount to Liz and Michael, who isn't here tonight. Hope you had a great night. Go out and spread the word. And if you know someone who works in science or engineering, get them to enter FameLab next year. Here's hoping we get another winner out of Adam. Good night and good luck.